Hmm.
Can you hear me?
I can now, yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Perfect.
Are you talking to me from the living room?
I am.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I've got quite a weird setup, actually. I've got 2 tables stacked on top of each other with a stool.
Well, I have a better setup. I'm just talking from bed.
From bed. That's even better. We'll get you some delivery breakfast.
That's a way to motivate everyone.
Yeah. That's how champions operate. Yeah. Every other room in the house is occupied with children doing other Zoom calls, squash lessons, or Lego, or whatever. So yeah. Nice. Okay. Well, we'll get going. People can join anyway as we go. So I think we'll get going. But so yeah. Hi Mo, and thanks a lot for coming on again. Really appreciate you giving up the time that you have at the moment to give us some more insights into how things are with you, how you're getting on during lockdown, but also, as you kind of seen from the title today, just want to use this opportunity to really ask you some questions and get these guys to ask you some questions as well about your mindset and really what's helped shape that over the years. It's obviously a really interesting subject in itself, but you are famous for being one of the most amazing kind of brains in squash. So we'll get into that, but let's maybe start with the lighter stuff initially. How are you going? Last time we spoke, it was relatively early. It felt like kind of the beginning of lockdown, and now it's like, whoa, we're still here.
Yeah, exactly. At the beginning I was thinking, the season was almost over anyways, and it was a nice break anyways, but now you feel like, okay, now you want to play, you want to be on court. So but I guess we have to wait. I mean, some other countries slowly starting to open up squash courts, and hopefully England, I think I've heard maybe close to 4th of July there might be some good news. But to be honest, no one knows anything. No one knows when we're going to be back competing again, but we have to stay positive and just and keep fit, and hopefully we'll be back sooner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's difficult. It's this constant uncertainty which makes everything a challenge for sure at the moment. Have you I mean, when we first talked at the beginning of this process, you were kind of ticking over 1-2 days on, a couple of days off. Has that changed much, or are you still in a sort of similar pattern of daily rituals?
Yeah, I'm still in a similar pattern, to be honest. I'm not trying to follow a program or have to have like a session or 2 every day. I have been in constant pressure almost all my career. I've been lucky enough with my body that I have never had an injury where it took me out of the game, where I had to. It kind of, when you get injured for a long time, you're treating the injury, but you're giving the rest of your body and your brain kind of a rest as well. And I didn't have that in my career at all. So I thought, okay, so why can't I actually, for the first time in my life, just chill and just give the mind a break from absolutely everything. So when I actually know when the tour is back again, I'm going to actually start training and be hungry. And I don't want to start that hard training from now and be burned at the time when I actually need to push hard.
Absolutely.
I would rather have that first period of training harder on myself when I start and push through it than starting from now. But having said that, I'm still having to keep few training, glute exercises, the stuff that keep you away from injuries, really. So these are important, but it's not really taking a lot out of my days.
No. And you've been playing a bit of tennis as well, haven't you? How's that been going?
Yeah, that's it. Actually, that I've actually been taking tennis as my kind of workout that I've been doing. Luckily, I've been able to get on tennis courts, and Technifiber sent me some nice tennis rackets. They asked me which racket do you want. I told them I want the Medvedev racket. The one he reached with it, the U.S. Open final. I want to feel like I'm playing like a professional. And then I sent him, So it feels nice actually to be playing another sport than squash. And I've been actually in the evening even playing with my brother and Todd Harity here. We've been playing football as well. So it's kind of nice finally, for the first time in my life, I've been able to experience other sports. While before I actually didn't do any other sports, not because I don't know how to, or I don't enjoy them. What was because my job is my body, and I don't wanna. If I'm gonna get injured, I will never forgive myself being injured off the court.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of one of the few things I had to, the pressure that I had to deal with mentally in my life, like sacrifice those things that I could enjoy, that I'm actually doing them in my life now.
Absolutely.
So yes, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and actually, kind of leading on from that, I thought it'd be quite nice to sort of start at the beginning with your squash, but also kind of like maybe even your sport. Like obviously, I know that you were a good swimmer as well at a young age. At what point?
All right. Wouldn't
Did
say good swimmer, Steffi, but
a
all
swimmer?
right. It's like,
Depends what you define as good.
yeah.
But yeah, there was obviously a period of time or a moment where you went for squash and you suddenly got hooked by it and it started to captivate you. Can you give us a bit of an insight into sort of when that happened and what your memories were there?
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I mean, I started as a swimmer when I was 5 years old. I was in the swimming team for 5 years. Started squash when I was 8, and my mom wanted me to be a swimmer. And even when I started to play squash, and a lot of people thought that I could be really good, she made me still do both sports. And then I won the nationals under 11. That's when she knew. And at the swimming, yeah, I was in the first team, but I was really in the middle, between the middle to last, really, and it wasn't the sport for me. I didn't really enjoy swimming either, to be honest. Having said that, it gave me, it actually put a lot of basics in the body and put into the body a lot of strength when you go ahead with another sport after that. So I think gymnastics and swimming really are very two important sports to start at a young age.
Definitely.
I tried to do a gymnast. I tried to gymnast 2 months, and the coach told my mom I have no future. So that was my story with gymnast, really. But squash was definitely the sport I feel like it was for me when I was at a young age, and the nationals was the turning point for my mom, at least.
So, kind of, can you talk us through that? So you say you kind of started playing at 9, and then you won the nationals like under 11. How did that go? I mean, plenty of people start playing squash at 8, 9 years old, and normally it takes a few years for them to start to maybe realize their potential sort of as a junior. But obviously, it happened quite fast there. You started at 9, and then by 10, you're already the best in the country.
Yeah.
How come? What was it, do you think, that you already knew maybe at that point that that was proven maybe by winning that event? What did it sort of show you, and obviously showed your mum that, like, wow, he's got something?
I think it was the turning point was when we met Kamal Awad. He was X1 number 2. He played the longest match with Jahangir. He's from Alexandria, so he came to my club when I was 10 years old to coach the under-19s before the nationals. And my mom, as hard nosed she is, she tried obviously to speak to the board at the squash there to make him go on court with me. Obviously, I said no, he's only for the under-19. There are other million kids like me that would want to go with him as well. And then by luck, he watched me playing while I was playing court, while I was at the court all the time. And I think he enjoyed watching me because he went to the board of learning out the board to put him on court with him. And then he played with me for 10 minutes, and then he told Mom, your son could be world number 1 one day, and I would like to take care of him. And then he coached me for 4 years, and that was the turning point that my parents realized if they get something like this said from someone like him, then there's something special maybe in this kid that we can actually work with. And they always gave me everything I needed. Every opportunity I had, they gave it to me. The opportunity to come to England changed my life, my squash, everything. It was risky, definitely, but it was either gonna really pay off or not, I think. As a teenager, you come to a new culture, very open culture. Egypt, the culture is much more strict, and it could have gone completely different. I could have gone just partying. When you haven't seen that life, and then you see it all of a sudden, you're by yourself. You just want to have it all the time, and you could go into a path that there is no way back from it. And luckily, my parents, even when they were away, they knew how to take control of both of us, and keep us disciplined. And that's a hard job they did, and I think they did such a fantastic job at it.
Definitely, we'll come to that more, because this is, that's the really interesting stuff about this, is trying to sort of understand. A few people have asked me some questions prior to this, actually, that are so fascinated to get these insights into. So, what happens, what things, contribute and shape somebody that becomes, the very few manage is that absolute kind of excellence at the top of the sport. And just briefly going back to the Gamal Awad first occasion where, you went on court with him, and he's obviously come off and said, I think this kid could be world champion. And
Yeah.
I've had that maybe once or twice in my life where it's like, wow, I've gone on court with a young player and it's just like, this is not the same. I had it with Yapka, who you probably remember, just thinking, this is different. So was there anything he particularly identified about that 10 minutes on court with you that gave him an insight to why he felt so strongly that you could go all the way to the top?
I think because I was so passionate about the sport, and not just that. I think he saw in my eye that I really wanted it. From when I was 10 years old, if you ask me the question, what do you want to achieve in squash? My answer was to try and break some history in the sport. That was my answer since I was a 10-year-old kid. It wasn't being world number one. So these things he saw in my eyes, and he felt like I always had big goals for myself. And I put for myself goals that were bigger than the people or anyone around me wanted of me. And I think he saw these things. And he, even though I was not the best junior in my group at that time, he knew that he saw there were a few things that I had in my character that once I mature, they will last, So I don't know what he saw, but I hope what he saw was right at the end,
I think you've got it pretty right. Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer, actually, particularly for sometimes the person that is successful, because you do what you do, in a way so intuitively. It kind of is you. It is your character, and you had that in you at that young age to say, I don't just want to be number one. I want to break records. I just want to go to a whole new level. And at the age of 10, that is pretty unusual to be that extremely aspirational. Have you got any kind of insights into where that came from? Is that an influence from somebody else? Do you think it's something just part of you? Is it maybe one of your parents or both of your parents, or anything you kind of...
Well, I've been since I was young, my parents, I think it was like a project. I was definitely a project. I'm still like a project end of the day, and that project is not finished till I finish my career, really. And my parents saw this, and they took, okay, this is a project, and how are we going to make that project? How are we going to invest in this project and in this product the best way possible? So my dad really invested all his money in me, and my brother, obviously, but he saw this as his best investment, not to put it in I don't know, real estate or stuff like that. It was more to his kids. And then after that, since I was a kid, the coach that I had, like Gamal Awad, when I started, he would make me watch certain movies, like Rocky Balboa, for example. He made me watch all the 5 episodes since I was 10-year-old. So I grew up watching these things. I grew up wanting to be like these heroes, these sporting heroes. I only watched sporting heroes when I was a kid, and I didn't really go out during the summer holidays with the other kids. I was only on court, and he would refuse to make me go on holidays, and even that it was hard, but at the same time he would tell me, sacrifice, this will teach you mentally how to be strong, this will teach you mental strength, and you'll thank me later, you'll get it later. I think these things, having Gamal Awad as a kid, I think he was the foundation. He put all the foundation for me, and after that everything went on track, and I was lucky that I've had lots of great coaches after him, obviously, and that they carried that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember you telling me one story once about Gamal Awad when he was training you in the sand dunes. And it for me kind of captured, I suppose, the intensity and the levels that he went to, and you said actually that particular period of training you've kind of recounted many times as like, well, if I can do that, but I can get through that, particularly in the junior career, I can get through this moment now. Yeah. Can you just perhaps recount that story briefly so people can get a bit of an insight into?
I mean, I think he used to, the thing about him, he was one of the nicest guys ever, but at the same time, when it comes to once we start the training, I remember before the session, we would pick him up on the way. So we had like a half an hour drive with him in the car. I was so scared during that half an hour, not because he is scary or anything, but he made sure that to be someone that I fear. Mm-hmm. So when I go on court with him, he put me into pressure sessions for 2 hours straight without going off court every day almost. And the amount of pressure, because I feared him and he made sure of that. So I felt always, every shot I hit on court, there's so much pressure in it. Mm. And if I do one mistake, it was hell for me. So I felt like every shot had to be perfect, and I was always under that pressure. Once that sessions are over, he was the nicest and the sweetest. Mm. So whenever I was always in hard matches in juniors, whenever I had some pressure times, whenever I was tired, I used to tell myself, I've had these moments in training. So there is no reasons and no excuse for me not to try and win these moments. And as I said, he had a big impact in my life as a squash player. And I think he put all the foundations for me.
Amazing. So, you touched on it briefly earlier about your move to the UK. I mean, you've talked about it, quite a few times on various interviews about that transition, and you say it was a kind of risky move. It's an all-in, whole family, let's ship over and go for it. You were 14, is that right? 15. Can you just give us a bit of an insight into what that was like for you? What were your experiences? What were your sort of emotions going through that process when you first moved over?
Yeah, it was weird. I remember the first. The whole decision was taken in 1 week. Really, I had the opportunity and I had a week to make the decision. I mean, my parents had a week to make the decision, really, and it was hard for them because I would have had to go by myself at 15 years old. I couldn't speak English because I was in a French school, so my mom came with me to England. They decided to go, my mom and me, and to see the school, see everything. And I think the first time from the train station, once I saw Jonah, my mom felt comfortable, and she, everything else was so easy because he made everything easy and comfortable for me. He really took care of me. He was my guardian at the school and everything. And to be honest, as I said, like, I couldn't really speak English, but the only language I needed there was the language of squash. And Jonah spoke squash, and that's the only thing I needed. And that's why we really got along very well, even when I couldn't speak English at the beginning. Because when we were on court, he didn't need to speak to me. I knew what he wanted from me by looking at him, and he knew that I understood him, and that's what I was good at. So, and then slowly, the English, after 1 year, I was fine. I started communicating, and things became easier after.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to hear a bit. I mean, I'm sure you could talk for a long time about Jonah, as with Gamal Awad. I mean, Jonah's obviously an enormous part of your process and still is. Could you somehow sort of capture, perhaps what the really the key things that he instilled in you, and how he helped shape you towards, or continue that journey, as you say, from Gamal Awad? Like, what was his kind of key contribution during the periods of time that you were with him?
I think he's mentally like no one else. He's one of the toughest, hardworking people I've ever met in my life. He was training even when I got there when he was 70-something years old or 60-something. He was really in shape. He's really in shape till today. But I think when I went there, I haven't started PSC yet. I was making big marks in the juniors, and then when I started making big marks after a year, I went. If me, I started PSA, and then I got straight to the top 20, and that's the time, had Nick Matthews, James Wellstrop, all the Shaban, all these big guys were there, and I grew up. They were my heroes, and still are. And one of the things that Jonah made me do is actually and believe is actually I can beat them at a young age, and he helped me through that process. And that was a really hard process because beating your heroes is very hard mentally, and it's hard to break that barrier. And he helped me a lot to go through that generation. And once I got the confidence, it was hard to me. It was hard to get me to that stage. Like, for example, I lost to Greg 9 times before I beat him the first time. Shabana was similar as well. And so yeah, he helped me a lot through that, and with other things with training, obviously, and stuff. But I think that was the biggest thing, helping me through that hard generation.
Yeah, completely. I can remember, I think it was the British Open, maybe when you played Greg, actually, and we were talking about it at some point afterwards. And I was with you between games, but you were calling Jonah as well. And there was a key moment in the match. And I think you said, afterwards, you said, I just needed to hear his voice.
Yeah, I remember that was actually the first time in my life I speak to him on the phone between games. I was playing the final with Greg in the British 2015, and I got injured in the first round against James when I slipped. So I was playing the whole tournament with taping my hamstring, and because it was the last round of the season, I was lucky enough to be able to push. And I went 2-1 down, and I didn't know what to do. Greg was controlling the match; he was playing so well. And then once I went out, I told my mom, "Can you get me Jonah on the phone right now?" And I just need to hear your voice to make me believe, because I actually at that time we knew what to do. We knew the tactic. We knew exactly what we needed to do in the match. But it was at that time the plan wasn't working, and I didn't believe enough in the plan. So I needed Jonah to make me. That was the best at what Jonah is, making you believe in a moment like this. And I heard his voice and took the tape off my hamstring. I said, doesn't matter anymore. And I just knew I needed to fight a bit in the fourth game. And luckily I had him in the fifth.
Absolutely. And it's amazing, as you say, it sounds quite simple, but when somebody's that influential, in your life, but as you say, you probably experienced it from the first moment you stepped off the train, there's that confidence and kind of charisma, but there's that aura about Jonah, and it would be the similar with Gamal Awad, that, like you say, to some extent, it's just that presence or that sound of their voice which can kind of make you believe. And do you think that's, maybe you can explain it even maybe a bit more detail, like with him. Of course, he says he's very articulate and he says things technically which you need to do or tactically, but there's something about his belief in you that makes you believe. What do you think it is?
He believed in me a lot from the moment he saw me. I think we had a lot of discussions when I arrived. I told him what I thought, what I needed to, what was my plan, what was my goals were, which were to win the World Juniors at the time. Actually, my goals were to win the World Juniors 2 years later. And I told him I needed to beat a certain player. So we needed to plan for that player. But he knew that I knew that I knew what I wanted, what were my goals, and he saw that. And I think he saw himself in me maybe a little bit. And it was kind of exciting because at that time he had a lot of great players, the players he coached in England when he was the national coach, and it was a time where maybe it went quite a little bit. Then I came, and I was an exciting project, and as well having Jonah in my corner was so exciting for me. It was a huge confidence just having that team behind you, and it was an exciting times for both of us. And it's great memories, I really miss those days, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, amazing. So so then you've gone through the process at Millfield, and you moved to Bristol when you were 17, and you've been here since, and obviously since 17 to the present day, some 11 years have passed, and you've had obviously huge successes and many experiences. Can you maybe capture how your mindset and your attitude has evolved or changed since your kind of teenage years through till now? Because it does with everybody, obviously, as they get older, but also you've had so many definitive kind of periods in your career and obstacles to overcome and things to figure out. Yeah, what things do you think your key learnings maybe, but how do you think your kind of mindset has matured and evolved over this period?
I mean, it's tough. Um, it's like you go through phases in your life where you can't just go at a straight line. If you go at a straight line, if anyone think that my life had been straight line, because I have not been out of like the top three for a few years or the past few years, and I've been consistent and things have been perfect, then it's wrong. Because uh, every other player, not just me, you have to go through challenges in your career. If you can pass those challenges while staying at the top, it's the things that happen behind the door that you had to deal with that no one knows about. My life hasn't been great, of course. I had to deal with a lot of challenges, and if you obviously probably 110% about all of them. And when I remember when I was a teen, like a lot of kids went partying, and I needed to decide what I wanted. I wanted a phase where I wanted to get to inside the top 10 at the time. I was only 18, but at the same time, partying seemed exciting, and everyone is doing it. And I was staying inside the college in the dorms at the time in my first few years, and but I decided squash is what I wanted, but because that's what I was forced to do when I was a kid. But when I was mature enough to make that choice, I understood why I was forced to do that as a kid. And then when you get to the top and you stay there for a long time, you get times where you could get bored, you could lose motivation, because no one can stay motivated all the time. And that's when you have to come back to remember the reason why you took up the sport is because you love it, not because it's your job as well. You go through millions of phases, and I went through phases where I lost world number one and I needed to get better as a squash player, much better than before, to try and come back again. And I had to do that 4 times in my career. Each time was much more difficult than the time before. And this is just my story and how I had to go through it. And every athlete had different story, full of challenges as well. But I think I stayed positive most of my career. I think one of the most important things that I've actually learned is to deal with the losses better, because I was always hard on myself when I was 20, between like 18 till I was 24. I was always so hard on myself when I lose, in a way that it would affect me the next tournament. But I learned that if I want to be consistent enough at the top, even when I lose, be hard on myself, but I need to actually know how to use it for the next event instead of it making it as a negative. Because there is not really no time to waste between tournaments. It's only a few days, really. That's one of the more things I think I've learned, is to how to deal with losses better.
Sure. Yeah. Is that something that you figured out yourself?
Well, people will be surprised, but I've never had a psychologist in my life. Like maybe mentally it's my strengths on court, but I have never had a psychologist in my life to actually get me to that point. It just I don't know how I had it, but I think as I said, maybe Gamal Awad, because of Gamal Awad, I think as a kid. But I think I'm always a student of the game, and I've always learned to deal with things differently over the rest of my career. I've always watched videos of LeBron talking, Federer, all these greats, because these are the people I want to be like. And from their interviews, I would understand the different phases they go through, how they deal with them. I watch till now sometimes interviews of Federer when he was 22, and then interviews when he was 29, and then interviews when he's 36 now. The goals they had were different at each age. What satisfied them was different. When Federer, what satisfied him at 22, for example, was winning a Grand Slam. At 28, his goal was winning a Grand Slam, having his kids watching him. So the thing that inspire every athlete, you have to find something that inspire you in every phase, because once you get to that goal, there is another one. So I've always watched videos of these. So that's how I learned, I think.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm really fascinated by the relationship between inspiration and desperation with athletes, but with anybody and that's trying to achieve a lot. And you know, the percentages of each can be quite different from one person to the next. And you know, I think you know that's probably shifted maybe a bit for you over the years. But like you say, when you're talking there about those people and you've watched them from such a young age and you've drawn inspiration from them, and you've always been clearly from the beginning very good at learning from other people. But I think in order to learn from other people, you need to have respect for other people.
Yes.
And you know, over the years of working with you, that's probably one of the key character traits that I notice more than anything else is your level of respect for everyone. And I kind of cite this quite a lot when I'm talking to other people and trying to help them with developing a better mindset and so on. And you know, it sounds quite simple, but I think that's one of the reasons why your ability to learn is so positive and proactive, because even though you're so successful, you don't see yourself necessarily above even the guy at the bar who says, you don't volley enough when you play, for example. You'll at least give him the opportunity to kind of go, you could be right. You know,
Yeah.
maybe I could learn something from that. Well, there's many people that wouldn't, because it's like, well, I'm world number one and you're the guy at the bar. And, you know, I think that's such a big thing, which is easily overlooked. And I think it's, you know, a huge part of your character, but that your respect for other people allows you to then learn from everyone and everything and every opportunity. And that's a huge part, I think, of how it's kind of shaped your character. That's amazing. So what would you say, or maybe who would be your top, or what would be your sort of top three key influences or key moments that have helped shape you? Maybe you've already said them, but perhaps if you can even pull those together. I mean, I haven't asked you much about your mum's input, but I'm sure that must be a massive part of your development, like you say, from the beginning. What would you say would be your sort of top three people, moments that have shaped you?
Three people or moments.
Maybe a mix. Maybe
Uh,
it's 2 and 2 or whatever you think.
I think one of the reasons definitely is my mom, for sure, 100%. Of course, my dad 100%, but my mom has always been with me. My dad was always the dark horse who then always taking the big decisions, you know. But mom left with me in England, and she was always with me, especially at the beginning till I was 24, 25. She used to come with me every tournament. My mom is very hard. She always wants better. So for her, even when I was world number one, even when I got to world number 22, when I was winning events, nothing was good enough for her. And we both are similar characters, so we always clash a lot. But I still needed her in almost every tournament, because those clashes, as much as we had some bad clashes sometimes, but because of them, she always gave me a challenge. And it was always a challenge for me to keep getting better. Okay, so I'm going to do better next tournament to show my mom I'm doing better, you know? It was always those kind of challenges, you know? And I never took it like, you're hard on me or being negative. I'm thinking, this is you are challenging me. And it's funny because when I was watching the documentary of Michael Jordan, he said that his brothers were challenging him. They gave me a challenge, you know, and it was a bit similar, you know. Like I remember there was a season I won 6 World Series events out of 7, and I won TUC, which was my 4th in a row, and the season was going very good. I was winning everything. I beat Nick in the final. I beat Chaban in that semis. And after the final, on the walk back to the hotel, it's like a 5-minute walk. I was walking back with my mom and dad, literally the trophy in my hand. My mom is talking to me the whole time about how bad I played that final, how I should have done that and that and that and that. And then I looked at her and told her, can you just enjoy for a moment your son winning a platinum event, beating Shabana and Nick, and then maybe tell me these things tomorrow, you know? But, you know, maybe at that time I thought of it as she's hard on me. I still, even if she thought I didn't play well, but I still won a major, you know?
Mm.
But at the same time, I thought that, but this is what made me who I am. Those kind of challenges she gave me, is to actually, it made me not satisfied with winning a major, because I need to win another one. Let's think about the next one. How am I gonna get better? That was her. That was what she wanted from me. That's the way she did it with me, and it made us clash. But it made me better as a squash player, and I needed that. And believe me, like, she was in Bristol last December, and she hadn't watched me and my brother train a lot, and she finally came to watch. She had the chance, and every night, literally after every match me and my brother played, she would come to my room, speak to me about what she thought till today, and I would sit there and literally listen and have a conversation with her about what I thought as well. And I actually agree with her about a lot of points most of the time she says. And actually, when I speak to Jonathan today, he always tell me, listen to your mom, she understands. So obviously,
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. It's an interesting one, I think, for anyone listening who's, a parent or a junior, or both, obviously. That dynamic, and it's like it's kind of well known in a way that the Egyptian kind of parent junior player relationships are quite hard, and that's in a way normal. And perhaps, in the UK, it's looked at that's extreme, and above the norm and whatever. But it proves, and obviously you're one of many, many, many cases of successful people and athletes who you need that desperation to push against. That person that's like, Jesus, this is still not good enough. I need to do even better, because otherwise it's comfortable. And, knowing you obviously will come back and you've won a tournament, and I can already see in your eyes that it's like, I'll enjoy it, but I'm kind of already thinking about the next one. That's probably the difference, or one of the key differences maybe between the people at the top and those others. And just probably the final question actually is, it was a question from someone that emailed just before this started, who was really keen to ask you, and then we'll open this up to the others in the chat to ask you some questions. But it's actually Ben Welton. And he said, we talked a bit about Ali obviously before in the previous Q&A, but he said, undoubtedly your strongest competitor to number one ranking and seems to have such high fitness and is also quick. How do you break a player like that down? Is it mentally by taking it to him, taking it through the games, mixing the pace of the ball, say, or are there any other ways? I suppose, maybe the question is, do you break him physically or mentally or both, or how do you break someone like that down?
I mean, to be honest, it was fun because me and Ali were speaking. We had that conversation on the PSC World Tour Instagram story, and we're speaking live. And we both were saying we are both not the best squash players in the world, but like we were both saying, probably when we play each other, it's not really the hardest tactic to have over playing like someone like Gawad, for example, or someone like Diego, where you have to think about the game so much, really. But it's more the reason why both of us really at the top is because we are harder to break. It's because if someone need to play a tactic against us, they need to sustain that tactic for a very long period of time, normally longer than other players. And that's what happened with Ali when we play each other. It's who break first, basically. We both know how to play against each other, but every time someone won, it's who broke the other person first. And he broke me a lot of times. I broke him a lot of times, and and that's how it goes, really. And obviously, every time you change some things in your tactic, but literally they help you during the match. But really, what makes the difference at the end is who breaks the first person first mentally, and not physically, because any player on court gets tired. Maybe some others get tired maybe than before others, but we are taught to push mentally. Some people can push for 5 minutes, some people can push the whole match. And right now, maybe me and Ali are the two people who push more than other players. Yeah.
Absolutely. Who's the toughest mentally you think you've ever faced?
The toughest mentally I ever faced is definitely Rami. I think I think Rami I don't think Rami the squash genius. Like no one will ever play like him. You know? And but what actually scared me was never his squash, and he never his squash actually, because I was young. I could get everything back. It was more his mental side of the game, how he can come back after a long period and come back and even be better than before. No one can do that unless you're mentally scary, really, you know. And I think that's something in his career he never got credit for. And to be honest, it was the mental side of the game for him that actually scared me, because he was mentally so strong and people didn't see it. And actually, I think the players who played him really will know this, you know. But yeah, in terms of mentally, I think he does not get enough credit for how scary mentally he is.
What is it about? I mean, I don't know exactly what you mean, but what is it about his mentality? What part of it maybe is scary? Is it? You tell me. What is that feeling of fear? Is it that you can't break him, or what can you feel when you feel that kind of pressure there?
You're basically never won the match with Rami unless the match is over. Like how many times in his career he was 2-0 down, he came back. He did that a lot at the end of his career, especially where he goes in the first round. You can see him using the first 2 games as a warm-up. He's 2-0 down, and then all of a sudden, after 10 minutes, he won the match 3-2 like nothing happened. No one can do that. If I'm 2-0 down in the first round of a major, I'll start to think about the game. I'll start to get nervous. I'll start to freak out a little bit, even if I can get through it. But it will look hard, you know, to look like it took a lot out of me. With Rami, it feel like just another day in the office for him. It was weird how he made these things look so easy, and it was everything he did, everything he had was so unique in different ways, and that's why definitely my matches with him, I really miss them. You know, it was always different. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, got a couple of question coming through. Do you want to? Can you read these in the chat, Mo? You see them okay? It's from Louis.
So I'll just check the chat. From how do you create a game plan and how long before the match you create it? So I sit with my team. So for example, in Canary Wharf, me and Hiren used to set at least 45 minutes, an hour at least before the match. We'd sit for half an hour, talk about, we hit in the morning first. We talk about the tactic before the morning hits, so we know what we're hitting, what the target. Then we come back an hour before the match. We're talking, not straight away for the tactic. We just, you know, kind of ease off the mood a little bit, and then we start talking about tactic here and there, and then I get to my mood where I'm by myself, you know, after I know what to do. And then like an hour before the match, really, I try to be with myself. And then how do I stick with it? I guess, you know, when you're in the match, when you're tired, that's when you have to remind yourself about the game plan, what you have to do, and you have to stay strong mentally to keep up with the plan. As I said, you're gonna break at some point, but how long is it gonna be till you break? And it's only your mentally is gonna decide when is that breaking point. And if you stay strong mentally, then maybe that breaking point won't come in the match. But it does come. And I had some matches where I got broken, like the final of the US Open. Ali completely broke me 3-0. And you got days where your opponent just way too good. Yeah.
Nice. There was one just before that actually from Louis. You usually hit your chest with the fist or point to your head during the match. Is it a message just for you, or are you sending a message to your opponent?
I mean, the point in my head is for me, squash is mentally. For me, any sport is mental. Anything in life is mentally, really. So I always point in my head when to always kind of, especially when I feel like I'm winning matches because of my mental strength. I always point on my head like, this is what got me through, you know, stuff like that. You know, it's because I know that this is my strength. So sometimes when you remind yourself of your strength, it gives you confidence.
Definitely.
So yeah.
There's a couple more here. One from Mahmood. Can you read these, or do you want me to read them? Do you want me to read it
Yeah,
to
you
you?
surprised me. You choose the questions for me.
Okay, nice. What do you think about when you have game match ball against someone you haven't beaten before? How do you get over that barrier? Good question.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, the first time I did beat Greg, it was hard. I lost 9 times in a row, and the last 3 times he beat me. Those last 3 times, I was getting closer each time. That was the time I felt I was starting to beat him. And as a young player, Greg always had a great game for me. And I had to change my game a lot and improve so much before I beat Greg. I remember. The first time I had the chance was Laguna. I was 1 love up and 10-6 up in the second game to go 2 love up for the first time against him, and I lost that game. And I felt like it would be just another time where I can't beat him. And the third, I won 11-9. Then the fourth, he was tired. I was 8-1 up and started coming back at me because at that time I was so excited I was beating him. And as much as I had the game plan and I was getting better as a player, sometimes you need your opponent to give you a little bit of luck at that time. And Greg gave me that end of the fourth, definitely, because I wouldn't have won the fifth. I was way too tired, and he was over me mentally at that time. I didn't have that edge over him at the time, and he kind of thinned the last few shots really, and I was a bit lucky. But it's hard to get through that barrier. It was hard for me against Shabana, against Darwish, against all the Egyptians because grew up watching them really.
Definitely. I'm sure you created some of that pressure for them to hit those tins as well. But so please tell us about your match with Ashur, which is known as the greatest squash match ever. Perhaps you can sort of capture what that match was all about, what it meant to you.
Which match?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm guessing the World Open final, but greatest squash match ever.
I mean, I think me and Rami always, when we speak, we think that our Gona final was the best match we both been in together. I think the World Champ final match was a good match, but I don't think it was as good. I think in the World Champ we both were up and down a little bit because of stuff to play your best in the world at a stage like the World Champ final. But Gona, the pressure is less, so both really gave it everything, and I was never disappointed after my match with him in Laguna because I felt I was part of history. I mean, we made history together, and that's the time where I was maturing more as well. It was always hard for me, at the beginning was when I was at number one, when he was getting injured and then come back and then beat me. It used to be hard, even though that I'm 4 years younger than him. But it was still because I've always put into myself that pressure to try and win all the time. And then the part of maturity in me is how I learned how to take those losses was Rami who taught me is dealing with those matches. Not Rami the person taught me, but like my matches with him taught me really, and I started thinking I'm actually playing matches with him where everyone waits for these matches and being part of something special like that is something I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life. And when I finished that match with Bono, then I was like, this is a match that people remember forever, and I'm very lucky to be part of it with someone who one of the greatest of the game, and that's the way I've been living with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's quite a few coming through. I'm currently in the under 15 category. I started playing squash last year. Do you think I can make it to the top level and be a world champion like you? From Omar Badia.
How old is he?
He's in the under 15s. Started playing squash last year, so maybe 14.
Yeah, of course. Your Ahmed Barada got to world number 3. He was world junior champion, and he started playing squash at 11 years old. Jonah started playing squash really and focused really late as well, like beginning of 20s maybe, and he won 6th British at the end. So,
yeah.
But it's all gonna be due to your hard work and believing in yourself. There'll be a lot of people gonna tell you that you're starting late, you're not going to be good enough, and that's when you need to believe in yourself and push hard. And but really, 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 not just say that I believe in myself without working hard. You need to have the attitude and actually go for it and work hard and make it like a life, ambition goal.
Nice. Yeah, that's great advice. It's recently reffing at the BGO, seeing a huge amount of pressure from parents, coaches, and juniors. What are your thoughts on this? And did you ever find this type of pressure too much as a junior?
I think it's getting worse now, definitely. It wasn't as bad when I was playing in juniors, definitely. But believe me, I had a lot of pressure as a junior. It was one of the main reasons of why I had to go to England. I had 3 clubs in Egypt supporting against me once when I was 12 years old as a kid. Having like 60 people supporting or close to 100 people. I'm like thinking, what is this? I was the only kid from Alexandria, and it wasn't really the best thing, really, when everyone else was from Cairo. But I had to deal with things like this. And I remember even I watched Atal as a junior, and he had a lot of people go against him as a junior. But and that's what made him strong now. Why he is the only one, or probably the best one out of his generation by far, really. I think you need that as a kid, definitely. You definitely don't want it easy and smooth, because that's even if your kid is really talented and such a good squash player, it's not that what will make him stay at the top. It wasn't what made Rami isn't. What made Rami is, I don't think, is how great he is as a squash player. Was more how hard and the challenges he had to go through in his life. That's what made him so strong. And I think sometimes they take it too far, definitely, at the British juniors. In my time, that didn't really happen, maybe a few times. But I'm really happy because I did watch some of the matches, and I did feel that I did take control of the matches. Like some of these decisions that we know is new to them. They only see them when they come here, because instead of completely different decisions over there, it's who like who. If I like that kid, okay, I'm gonna give him the decisions. Basically, I had to go through that a lot in my life in the junior matches in Egypt. And I think later when I came to England and actually had Jonah, I started playing differently a little bit, definitely. It's maybe a little bit in the culture, the coaches sometimes teach you a few tricks here and there, and you get told to do that and that, and you're a kid, you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And I was lucky that I came to England at a young age and learned how to play, the game. And that's why I think a lot of the players, I've watched Asal as well, for example, the junior. He had a few tricks here and there, and every time now I watch him, he's a completely different player. The way he plays, the way he's professional. As a kid, I was the same, very similar, but that's what we only saw. And then you get exposed when you start traveling, and then that's when you understand things more. Yeah.
Definitely. I've got quite a few questions here. Okay, I'll just buzz through these. So, what do you tell yourself when you go 2 up and your opponent brings it back to 2-all? Depends who the opponent is, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it depends. I mean, it only happened to me 4 times in my career, really, when I was 2-love up and lost 3-2. One of them was against Ali in the final of the TUC when he got the world number 1 of him 2 years ago. That was a hard match to take, definitely. I was 2-love up, 6-1 up in the third. I had control, but when your opponent come back to 2-all, that's when the momentum is definitely not with you. But I had another match with Ali where I was 2-love up. He came back to all, and I won it in Qatar as well. So it's different, Sometimes it's definitely the momentum is going to be with your opponent, but that's when at that time you need to actually remember that your opponent still know that you won 2 games off him, and if you did that, you still can win a third game, and it's actually only 2-all. You're not actually still losing. So you just have to look at the positive things, even though it's going to be really hard when you were 2-love up. So just remember, it's only 2-all. You're not 2-1 down. You're not 2-love down. It's only 2-all. It's only one game. You both need the same amount of points to still win the match.
Exactly. And I mean, as you've talked about all this through this, isn't it? It's like, here's another challenge. I was
Yeah,
2 up, now I'm 2 all. This isn't what I thought was going to happen. It's kind of
yeah.
got a bit wrong. How am I going to figure out this problem and respond? So what's the most important aspect of fitness training to you? Finn finds it interesting. How certain players like Farag seem to have a lot less muscle mass than others, but are still able to move so well on the court.
It depends, to be honest. Everyone needs to figure out, every player needs to figure out what is the best movement pattern for him and his body. Uh, Ali, the way he moves, obviously, that's the way he needs to move for his body, and he's so smooth with it, and it's so effective for him. Uh, Tariq can't move this way. I cannot move this way. But Tariq, the way he moves, he has so much speed, and it's so effective for him as well, but in a different way to Ali. So and every player, some player would find the speed of Tariq more annoying than Ali. I find the speed of Ali more annoying than Tariq, because for my game, for example, because the speed of Ali is that he's taller, he has a better reach, so he can volley more than Tariq, for example, while Tariq maybe can move forward a bit better than Ali. So he will have a better touch, for example, because he's smaller, easier for him to lunge than us. So you gotta find out what is the best movement pattern that works for you. And I definitely didn't move the same when I was 22 to when I was 29. So every phase in your life, your muscles are different, like getting older, basically. So so the movement pattern for them need to be a bit different. You can't move the way I can't move the way I was moving a few years ago. So we had to make some adjustment in our training, for example. So I think you got to find what works for you and make it work for you, and not to take what everyone else is doing and do what they're doing, because that would be, you're risking yourself to a high risk injury.
I think that's very true. I think particularly at the more competitive end of squash, juniors and pros as well, when you see someone training in a certain way and they're successful, it's tempting to kind of go, oh God, and they're winning matches. They look fitter, they look faster. I need to do what they're doing. And as you rightly say, it's a different body, different movement patterns. And perhaps just to add to your answer as well there, that certainly one of the things which I think, we've focused on and you've worked hard on more and more over the years is the sort of functionality of your movement and your muscle behavior more and more, compared to just the strength of it, for example. So it kind of becomes more specific, doesn't it, over time? With
and that's something I never understood really in my career, and I had to understand it. I only started to work hard for it the last 2 years, because I knew I needed to change. I needed to do something different, and I mean, if maybe I learned it when I was 22, maybe it would have been effective I think it would have maybe been more effective for the long term, but I don't think it would have been effective for the short term. But maybe I needed my movement to look ugly to beat these guys at that time, because my movement looked ugly at 22, but I just was running all over the place. I was young to do it, and I didn't mind it, and it was making me win. Now it won't make me win. Now I can get away with it. Now I need to move like a good squash player, basically.
Yeah, no, that's it. So we're kind of just approaching. I'm just going to grab two more here. So, have you set any big goals for yourself after you retire from your squash career? Good question.
I'm not sure. I would like to do something different than squash. I like challenges. I would like to take a different challenge. I wouldn't want squash maybe to be my main thing. I would still like to be involved in the sport more as a hobby. But I don't think I will have something. I'm not sure. But a lot of players did say the same thing, and then they ended up, because sometimes I come back and think I spent so much time in my life, and I know so much about this, and I have so much experience in the sport now, so I should really do it, And so I'm not sure really, but all I know that I would like it. I would like things to be really quiet for me and my family, hopefully one day, because I've had a very intense life, lots of pressure every day to stay at consistent level like this. So it's every single second is hard work for me. So that's why when I finish, I would like things to be less intense, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I think you'll have earned it by then for sure. Okay. What advice would you give to master squash players on the fitness side and injury prevention who want to keep going?
I think lots of Pilates. What do you think? I mean, Hadrian, you've been telling to me to do Pilates all your life, and now I'm done giving advice to do Pilates.
Good. Good.
I think doing lots of Pilates is very important because you're gonna make the muscles that don't work basically, and you need these muscles to work to prevent a lot of injuries like the glutes. You want to switch off the hamstrings, the common injuries. You know, you don't want to make these muscles work as much as they normally do, even at the top level, really. So Pilates is very important. Doing a lot of mobility to keep the body as young as possible. You know, I'm playing professional, and my body is definitely older than 29. But it's those mobility that makes it as younger as possible. You know.
That's
so,
relatively new, isn't it, as well? As you
sorry?
say, that's relatively new, the mobility stuff, isn't it, as part of the training program?
Yeah, that's something I started doing the past year and a half as well. So I think it's, as you got older, as these are the main focus really, and that's what I think. I mean, Hadrian, what do you think? You should know more about this question. I mean
yeah,
you're
I'm a master.
You're around the master category.
I'm definitely in that category. Yeah, yeah, completely. I mean, I think from a training point of view, Pilates is definitely great. And it's about looking after the body rather than perhaps trying to almost make it fit. Definitely be fit, be healthy, but it's about specific functionality. And then I'd say the second and most important thing is just working on efficiency of movement, which is about timing the movement better to the ball, avoiding rushing, and working on ghosting and movement patterns, because you can keep improving that forever.
Well, if you come to this squash camp, you will find out more about these things. You'll find out more about how I am taught to play the game.
True. Yeah, we're almost full, but we've got a course running at the moment actually on movement efficiency. So check that out on Elite Squash if you're interested.
What's gonna happen? Are the camps in August still happening, or still not sure about because of what's happening still?
Good question, actually. It's looking like we'll move them to Bristol.
Oh, great! Well, great for you, not for me, because I won't have squash course to train in. But yeah, great for you.
Bristol at the end of August is our most recent plan on this. Just trying to put it as late as possible into the summer days to give us more time. So yeah, more likely Bristol at the end, but it won't be Exeter. Right, last question from Jody, who's very loyal follower of all these things. Taking those things into consideration, Pilates moving with greater efficiency on core, advances in sports science. Do you think players can lengthen their time of the pro tour?
Definitely, I think we are lucky to play at a time where sports science has improved so much. Nutrition and all the things that haven't been provided before have improved so much, and I think that's why you see in the past players like Jonathan Power, Peter Nick retired at 32. You know, around that time. Players like Greg, Nick on 36. You know, Nick retired 37, Shabana 35, 36. Definitely, players' age has improved so much. But again, not everyone can play till at that age unless you have the attitude and the hard mentality to do it. Like I've spoken about Shabana, Greg, Nick, but these are the kind of players that were able to do it and play at the top of the game at the same time. Having said that, I think Jonathan Power and Peter Nicol, if they had those facilities, they would have been able to do the same. Because obviously, you wouldn't be able to achieve these things without having that hard-working attitude. We are lucky to be provided by these things, but again, you know, it takes one really small step to keep you out of the game for a long time. And if you have really an Achilles injury at 34, 33, 35, that's a bad time to have an injury like that. And that's what Greg is doing right now is absolutely amazing, that he's trying to come back from an injury that a lot of players would retire after it, even if they get at their peak. He's trying to come back at 36, which is, he has to work more harder than normal.
Amazing. Yeah. Fantastic. Right. I think that's a good time to wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time again.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
No problem, Stevie.
More things that I didn't know about you. Thought I knew them, but there's a few more insights there, which is great. And obviously loads of insights for you guys out there. I'll just unmute you all, and then you can send your shout outs to Mo and your thank yous.
Thank you.
Before we go.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
شكرا يا محمد.
Merci يا حبيبي.
Thanks, Mo.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
شكرا يا محمد.
Thanks, everyone. Merci يا حبيبي. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Even the dog saying thank you.
Dog on the camera.
Right, thank you, Mo. Great stuff.
Thanks.
Great advice there.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
From Britain, from London, but Irish.
Okay. Nice to meet
In
you.
touch, Patricia, if you want some advice on
Thank you.
movement.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Patricia, get in touch if you want some advice on movement and injury prevention. Happy to help.
I sure did. I've had so many. I've had so many injuries. You know, just to get any bit of advice would be great, because I'm in the the masters category now. I'm nearly 50, so still wanting to compete in at some level. You know. So that was, thank you so much.
When I get to 50, hopefully we can compete together.
I wouldn't mind that at all now, you know. I mean, I'm not sure I'll get your drop shots at the front, but maybe we can compete at the back.
Have fun. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Adrian.
Cheers, guys. It'll be on our YouTube channel, this, if you want to watch it back. We've got the recording. You can always catch it again or send it to your friends. All right. Thanks again, Mo. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Stevie.